Okay, some of the agenda items for today. We're going to talk about kind of what kind of data can we see in OpenAir as we are managing our projects, and what kind of alerting is available to us. I'm going to talk a little bit about the news feed. It's a feature that we don't see a lot of customers using or benefiting from, so I'll talk a little bit about some of the use cases where that could be helpful. We're also going to talk about some dashboarding and some reports for communicating projects. And then lastly, there was a new release item back in October of 2020. It was a tag field, and I want to talk a little bit about what that does and how those potentially could be helpful. So let's talk about in-system visuals around projects. The easiest way to get quick information about a project is, this is pretty basic, but it really is about the project list view. So within the project list view, we can filter by project stage. We can then be able to quickly visualize all the key components of our project. We can customize this view to show the data that we want to see. We can also have multiple saved views of the list data. So, at a quick glance, I can filter on my projects if I have access to more than just mine, and I can look across to see if I see any kind of potential issues that are happening. For example, if I see no booked hours for my projects, I know that the resourcing hasn't been done. We can see the planned hours. We can see the worked hours, approved hours. If you do T&M, you can also see the build hours, and you can also kind of keep an eye on the percent complete. So these are all nice KPIs around your project to be able to kind of identify potentially, upcoming issue around budgeting, around the hours. There's also dollars that you can also view in your lists. So budget dollars, you can do income, you can do income would be your invoicing, and then you can do a delta. So those are all standard dollar fields that you can add to your list view to kind of show where you are from a dollars perspective. I've also added a column in here called news feed, and I want to show you. We'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of slides about what the news feed does and how that works. This is a good view, but obviously this is a very high level view. This is the 10,000-foot view of your project. It doesn't. It could give you some nice triggers on potential challenges, but it's also very high level, so you may have to drill deeper. Drilling deeper into the project task structure, here's we can get a better visual of if there's any potential red flags going on in our project. We can see all of you. If you're using OpenAir, as you know, is able to be set up in multiple ways. One way is to be able to assign hours to named resources and a task assignment, which ultimately rolls up into planned hours for each task. And so I can see here, all of my assigned people, I can see their hours, and then I can also see how they've been worked. So for example, Marie Porter was given a couple of hours to review the SOW. She ended up spending 5.5. So we're over budget on Marie's one task, but we could be under budget in other tasks. So it may be okay, but something to think about. And so what a lot of customers will do is, try to manage your tasks and manage potentially your EAC. What's my estimate at complete? There's a few different ways in the system to do that. One way that's pretty, we see a lot is where you, at the beginning of a project, there's a baseline feature. So you'll notice here, I have a baseline column. So this is a copy of my project that, my project plan, and it now becomes visible in my outline view. And so now I can maybe go in and manipulate my planned hours. So if I know she needed 5.5 and we only scope 2, I can go in and update the planned hours to 5.5. It will make this task 100% complete. And then I can kind of start to manage my estimate at complete at a task level by updating the planned hours for each task according to the hours needed by the resources. And then that will kind of give me a better idea if I think I'm going to be over budget or under budget for my project. And so then managing the planned hours updates the percent complete as well of each task, which ultimately rolls up to an overall percent complete. You can also add in some gap information into your project outline view. So this could also be very helpful. So in other words, here I see that Jody was given 84 hours and against 87 and a half. And so gap basically will give you a visual of the difference between the delta, the planned hours and the approved hours. So gap is another good column for being able to identify potential over or underage. If your views don't look like this, I'm using in my screenshots kind of the latest and greatest UI. So there is some switches that might be required to get some of this outline view functionality. There's an enable user level outline view is a required. It does give you a little bit of drag and drop capabilities in the Gantt chart enhancement. So if you don't see exactly what I'm seeing, you probably are on an older UI and may not have some of the switches from the recent releases enabled in your account. So something to think about taking advantage of. The news feed. So I mentioned this earlier. So the news feeds, think of it like a chat, but you can set status for the chat. So you can create news feed and say, we're on track. And if I come up before, if I look at here in this view, oops, you'll see that this project is set, it's saying on track. So what this view, what it's going to do in the list view is it's going to pull the latest status into this view. So if I had multiple statuses, it's going to pull the most recent. And so it gives you a quick visual here. But in addition to just creating a status, you can add notes and requirement and other items, comments into this news feed that you can then have access to people that are on the project team, and they can have visual of kind of some of the things going on in the project. So that could be very handy. One of the downsides of this newsfeed feature is the lack of reportability of it. So, it's available within the project, it's available at the list view, but beyond that, it's not filterable and you can't report on it yet. However, in one of the releases last year, they enhanced the scripting engine to have access to the newsfeed object. And what that allows us to do now is we can actually email updates or actually integrate potentially with a Slack type of communication tool, where if there's someone adds a new newsfeed value, we can actually send that out to a project team or to project owner or others interested parties. So that's a kind of an interesting use case here of being able to alert folks anytime there is a new newsfeed item, and keeping the entire project team in the know. Another popular tool for managing projects and maintaining statuses, right? Yet red, yellow, green. How are we doing on scope? You can do these simply with custom fields. So we do this here at Top Step. We have custom fields on our projects, and our project manager is responsible for updating these on a weekly basis. And if there are any changes, they're going through and they're updating what the current status is of the newsfeed. Of the project health. And then what we have actually script is moving the current status to the historical notes. It runs each week and moves it. So they're required to put a current status in each week and update their statuses. And then as a director, I get a report each week that is filtered on all projects that have either red, yellow statuses, or I get a report on all my projects with all the status values. You can do both. You can also create dashboards based on the status of your projects as well. So this is a good way to be able to have visibility. No one's surprised. We're putting in notes to describe what the challenge or lack thereof is, and be able to have those visible and reportable throughout the project and throughout OpenAir. Another common that's becoming more and more common. OpenAir has a project budget feature. So next month, we're going to talk more about budgets. But for today, we're focused on the project budget. So there's a transactional budget and a project budget. The project budget allows you to set cost budgets or hours budgets within the project and be able to see actuals against the budgets. And the benefit of this budget is it gives you the ability to spread the costs or spread the hours over time. So we can see how each quarter or each month the planned hours lay out across our project. And then I can see each quarter, each month, how the actual hours come in against that budget. And do the same for costs. So if you have labor costs, and expense costs that you're expecting, you can go out and put those in when you expect those expenses or labor costs to hit, and then that will allow you to use this. And this becomes ultimately very reportable. You can have different versions of this project budget. You could actually project budget down to the task in addition to at the project header level. So very flexible tool. Takes a little bit of getting used to and messing with it, but it can be very powerful in being able to give you a good visual of where you might be going over budget, under budget, both from a costing perspective as well as an hourly perspective. One of the standard alerts is available in OpenAir is a budget alert. So you can go in if you have permissions and set up a budget alert, and that can go run on an automatic basis. You can determine when it runs, what's the level. So in this example, it's looking at approved hours, getting 80% of the budgeted hours, as well as invoice charges reaching 80% of the budget. So this is one of those automatic alerts. You set it up, and then there's some other filtering you can do by different projects potentially. Maybe you want to set it up for a specific project. There's some other filtering available. One of the downsides of this budget is it's based on approved hours, and sometimes by the time hours get approved, it's too late to get a heads up that there's a potential budget issue. So we've had customers ask us to build more scripted custom alerts that's looking at different alerting capabilities. So for example, we want to be able to say when worked hours reach a certain threshold, not just approved. We also maybe be able to say when worked hours reach a threshold, and the overall percent complete of the project is greater than X. So you can start to think about ways to combine the different out of the box KPIs to be able to send custom alerts in different circumstances. So using the scripting engine, using email alerts, even Slack potentially, or other communication tools can give you kind of that ability to get creative here and be able to do these proactive pokings of the data from OpenAir and not be limited to just what this budget alert does. But however, this budget alert can be very useful. It just is a very limited use case. So some of the key reports that we've seen very useful, you can look at projects in lots of different ways. So in this example, we're looking at a project and each user, we can see their assigned hours / planned hours. We can see the booked hours. We can see the time entered at all pre-approved. And then the other value in this report that's interesting is your bookings with actuals. So bookings with actuals is a standard summary value you can get in OpenAir reporting. And what it does is it computes actuals on timesheets through today, bookings tomorrow forward. So the benefit here is we can see if we are looking at, Beth, we had expected Beth to work 512, she's booked for 254, she's entered 352, and with her current, what she's worked to date and what we have her scheduled, she's at 431. So that 431 number in this example kind of gives you, based on the scheduling, this is where we expect to land with this resource or at this project. And so if your scheduling is accurate, you've got a good view of the workload moving forward in the bookings module, and people are putting in timely time, this can be a very powerful, it can kind of get to that estimate at complete calculation using time and bookings to calculate. So this is another option to kind of look at the future and determine where I'm going to land, and then start to make adjustments if you think you're going to be off. This particular report is focused on customer and project and user. You could also add task. You could add task and user and project. So you can slice and dice this data. I've also, the time period on this report is important, how you set it. So this particular report is set based on inception to date. And so it's looking at all data from the beginning of the project through a certain date. And so in order for us to get all data from the beginning and all data into the future, what we've done is we've set a yearly ITD time period, and we are focused on next year as the end date. So what this time period does is gives us everything through the end of next year. So any bookings that go into next year would be part of the calculation, and all time from the beginning of the project. And so this would give us kind of our entire view of what the end result's going to be from the data. There's lots of other options. You may want to see where are we as of today. And so still using an ITD type of report, but you can say yearly ITD through today, and that will kind of give you a current view of where are we at this project today with regards to all the different hours. And then obviously looking at trends is something customers look at often. You know, where are we week over week? And so being able to set the time periods there to look at weekly, starting or ending through a certain date or period. So all three have great value and different, and are answering different questions. But at the end of the day, you know, there's probably a version of each of these that all PMs are using to get to the data and review it. If you are tracking user costs, a lot of customers have different strategies around tracking user costs from the folks that are entering time. If you are doing cost tracking, there are a couple of custom calcs we've seen that can be really valuable in calculating the expected margin. So again, this is using all the same hourly values that we showed in the previous report, but this one has two additional values. One is a margin percentage. This is through today. So in other words, as of now, this project is at 43.75% margin. So it's looking at the user's costs, it's looking at the billing or invoicing or revenue rec, depending on how you calculate margin, and it's creating that percentage. But it's going through today or this week. So within the custom calcs, you can use date filters to set a date filter within the custom calc, so that when you do embed it into a report where there's this ITD report, the custom calc adheres to its own dates, not the reporting date. If you look at the total margin, this is what's showing what we're going to be at the end of the project based on the data. So although we are currently at 43.75% for the business consulting, at the end of the project, should things go the way that they are planned, we will be at 37.61%. So again, another KPI that you can do if you are managing margins in OpenAir and costs, and gives you a really good maybe indicator of how the projects are doing and overall health. And then with any of these reports, you can, if you're a visual person like me, you can take those and then put those in your dashboards. So OpenAir has the capabilities to have a dashboarding tab within the home screen, and you can then subset different dashboards to be able to display different outputs of reports. So, you know, some of the examples we're seeing here, we're looking at trends, right? We're looking at our booked hours versus our timesheet hours to see if we see any any bad trends that we need to address. In the graph, we have a margin compare, where our margin through today versus our expected margin at the end, how do those compare against different projects? So we can see where there's a potential gap between those two values that we might need to go address. You can see planned hours versus other values, booked hours versus timesheets for individuals over a given period. So these are all good, real good charts and graphs that kind of tell a story and answer a question, and you can use to get some quick answers. In addition to graphs, I really like being able to show reports on my dashboard. So the reports give you another quick view, but it gives you more of a report looking view. But what's nice about these is, you don't have to run the report. You get just, see it on the dashboard, and you can have all the same value. It's automatically updated nightly. And you can also filter. So by entering like data into the blank boxes in the middle between the client, the blue and the data, you can actually type in there and it will filter. So this reports are showing like project status or project progress. So these could kind of be a quick view. I can look in my reports and in my dashboards and be able to see where there potentially are project issues I need to address. The report slash graph up top is looking at the issues log and looking at project issues. So a lot of customers will take advantage of the issues table related to projects and be able to use those to kind of monitor any ongoing issues within a project. So it's just another way to potentially manage your projects, manage any issues. And then within those issues, you can track the status of budget versus schedule, et cetera. Now, previously I showed where you could do that using custom fields, which is an option as well. But what you're seeing here with this color coding is you're actually seeing what's called a tag field. Tag fields were new as of 2020. And what it allows you to do is to create a custom field that's a tag type and be able to colorize the values, the list values in the field. And then once you show those both in list views and reports, you can then see those color codings inside. So they're really good for calling out attention to different, so I can see really quickly where I'm at risk or where I need attention. So that's a good thing. Some of the downside of a tag field is they're not filterable in reports. So once you create those tags, you can't filter reports by a tag. So I couldn't show all the issues that are at risk. So there are a few reporting limitations when considering using a tag field versus a standard custom field. But they are visually very good, similar to the newsfeed we saw earlier. They have a nice visual punch in the UI that calls attention to what you need it to call attention to. A couple more things about tag fields. So this is kind of, if you go back to the release notes, and if you need some more information, please feel free to contact TopStep. But when you create a tag field, you have to go in and create the value of the field. You have to create, and then you have to use the hex color code to set the colors. So in the example here, we're setting a value called extreme, and we're using the hex color code to basically determine what the coloring shows up. So this is kind of a little blip from the release notes that we put together back last year when this came out to kind of show how these are created and how they become visible. So to summarize, always try to use standard views to get insight into project management, budget management, and overall project health. The list views are really powerful. They can be customized. You can have multiple versions, and they can be very good, both list views as well as outline views inside of project plans. Reports always, of course, will give you more analysis options. You can look forward, you can look backwards, you can look at trends within your project. So obviously developing a key set of reports giving you good answers to your questions as PMs is critical to success. And then taking those reports that are feeding you and being able to visualize the output of those reports. That can be really powerful, both as just a graph as well as just displaying the output onto your dashboard where you can see multiple reports next to each other with different values. So that's can be really a great one stop go see what's going on across my projects. Also think about, what can you do to be proactive? Budget alerts out of the box. The news feed could be potentially helped by being able to notify using custom scripting. We can also do scripted around custom budget alerts or other type of project metrics that we want to measure and alert when we reach certain criteria. So there's a lot of ways to be able to put those together, dream those up. TopStep has a lot of experience building these for customers. So if that's something you were interested in, please reach out. Be happy to help. And the goal of any good project management tool is never to be surprised and always being proactive. So having all these visuals above should arm all project managers with the right tools to be able to be proactive, be able to have those hard customer conversations early rather than later, and ultimately make happy customers and more profitable customers. So thank you for today. If you want to learn more about TopStep, if you're not familiar, please feel free to visit our website. All webinars such as this will get posted to our website. We've got library of webinars and other tips and tricks there for OpenAir users. So feel free. There's a lot of really good information that we are happy to put out for consumption.